Hey fellas, Mike Yarbrough here. I'll tell you something that's humbling is when I go out and I read some of the reviews that you guys have left for me and the podcast out there on iTunes. It really speaks a lot to me. It gives me the motivation to keep going, but also helps get this in front of the guys who need to hear it the most. Check out this review from Davies077. He says, I love the content brought to us by Mike and his vast number of knowledgeable guests. I didn't know I had a vast number, but that's awesome. This podcast tackles topics of manliness and what that means in a way that's relatable and also applicable to the life of every man. That's right, Davies. I appreciate that, my friend. And look, guys, if you don't mind, take 5 minutes of your day, go out there on iTunes and write a review for this podcast. If this has meant anything to you, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a guy. Get this out there in front of the guys who need to hear it the most. Thanks so much.
Duty, honor, country dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
The destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals.
Now we are the masters of our fate.
Howdy, gents. Welcome back to another episode of the Wolf and Iron podcast. I'm your host, Mike Yarbrough, founder and curator of wolfandiron.com. And I'm so glad you're here, men. My guest today is Juan Garzon. We're going to be talking about creating a pitch for your ideas, and also talking about story. We're going to get into a good bit about the hero's journey and what that looks like. And guys, this is really good for the entrepreneurs for sure. So if you're an entrepreneur guy or you're thinking about going down that road, you definitely need to know these things. You need to understand how to pitch your ideas and how to craft your story. But this is also really, really key for anybody else, because if you're trying to go for another job and you want to posture yourself as the guy to hire over whatever your competition may be, well, there's things like what's your experience and how long have you been doing this or doing that. But there's also your story. How do you relate to whatever the customer or whatever that business needs? So I think this is something that any guy can benefit from. And I think that when we talk about story, just about we all find it fascinating, but especially those who are entrepreneurs. And guys, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to know how your story, your personal story, relates to the story of your customers, because guess what? You get to be the guide and the mentor for their story because your customers are the heroes. And so Juan's going to be talking about that as we kind of get into this. But before we jump into it, I just wanted to say one thing. I really appreciate you guys. I know a lot of you who listen to the podcast have already come over and have joined our free Facebook group, the Wolf and Iron community. And the conversations out there, guys, are just stellar. They're just above, they're above board in so many ways. They're the exact kind of conversations that you wish you could have with men on a regular basis, but that it feels like it's pulling teeth to get guys to talk about something other than just sports and whatever other kind of stuff is going on. Not only that, but you guys ask great questions, deep questions about family and marriage and kids and challenges, addictions, all kinds of stuff. But there's such a wealth of knowledge out there for all of us to benefit from. So when you guys ask a question, we all benefit from the responses. And look, if you're looking to join this high caliber group of men, I want to invite you to do so. Head over to wolfandiron.com/thegroup. That's wolfandiron.com/thegroup. That'll slingshot you over to our Facebook page, our group page, and where you'll be asked a few questions. Now, you've got to answer these questions, guys, because we don't let just anyone in. We keep the riffraff out, and we keep the caliber of men in the group really, really high. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a great place to be. So if you think you're cut out for it, head over there, wolfandiron.com/thegroup. And now my conversation with Juan Garzon. Mr. Juan Garzon, thank you so much for being on the Wolf and Iron podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I was talking to you a little bit about this before we started the official podcast, but this has actually been really exciting. For the last several guests that we've had on the podcast, they've been somewhat local. You're actually very local. You're in Charlotte. And
I am.
It's awesome to be able to talk to people that are in the city, that are doing things. And we actually have another connection. Before we jump into what you do and all that kind of stuff, we're going to be talking about Pitch Breakfast and StartCharlotte and your consulting side of things. But I just wanted to let people know that I quit my job last June to be a full-time self-employed entrepreneur guy with the businesses that I do. And but the building that I was in, the company that I was working for was called Cardinal Solutions, and I was in the Packard Place building where you guys do the pitch breakfast. So
that's right. Yeah.
I would see you guys in there and I think, man, these guys have got like an amazing breakfast happening. Two, people are dressed up and it looks really nice. And I always thought, what are they doing in there? And it's just awesome how this has kind of come around here. So that I get a chance to talk.
Well, I'm sorry you didn't get it. I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to make it out to one of those pitch breakfasts, but at least you saw what was going on. So you got a little taste of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it looked legit. So I'm excited to learn more about it. So for the guys who did not experience pitch breakfast and don't know you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things that you do.
Sure. So my name again is Juan Garzon. 15 years in the marketing communication space, and now consulting on my own as a messaging strategist for brands and small businesses. And then I also run the Pitch Breakfast event, which is a nonprofit event that hosts monthly in Charlotte, and we're in a couple other cities as well. But we host these regular pitch events, kind of like Shark Tank, where you get companies, giving their pitch, and we've got some mentors, advisors who give them feedback on that. We do it in front of a live audience of 100+ people with breakfast. And then I also have a media company, StartCharlotte, that focuses on the Charlotte startup scene.
So you got a lot of things going on, and they're all, built around entrepreneurship. What got you started down that road, saying that not only are you going to be an entrepreneur yourself, but how are you going to actually help other people be, entrepreneurs and the best entrepreneurs they can be? How did you get started going down this road?
Yeah, so it started a few years ago when I decided I was going to get in the mortgage business, and my wife and I had bought our house, and I said, hey, mortgages seems like a good thing to get into. So I got my mortgage license, went to work for a company, and we were trying to refinance people's homes. And it turned out that they were not able to help people with mobile homes, with manufactured homes. And I saw an opportunity there and ended up quitting my job, starting a company doing mobile home refinances, specifically online. Did that from 2004 until 2008, when the mortgage industry was not an industry you wanted to be in anymore. But during those 4 years, I would tell people, people would ask what you do, and I'd say, oh, yeah, I've got this business, NH Loan Finder, I do this online. And there was no support. There was just nothing out there. There was no community of other entrepreneurs that were working online. There was no mentorship opportunities. The term startup has not been out there in everyday business language then. And so after that experience, I decided that I wanted to be a part of that community that helps entrepreneurs. And all of these organizations that I mentioned, StartCharlotte, Pitch Breakfast, and even my consulting work, it's all about helping entrepreneurs find that support that I didn't have.
Well, I can tell you from one entrepreneur to another, that's definitely true. And even now, it is difficult to find people, especially that are in your particular niche, whatever that niche happens to be, to find people that you can talk to and say, hey, we're getting ready to hit this next stage or this next phase of growth. And there are some things that I know I don't know. Can you help me out, right? Or can you, am I going down the right path? Am I setting myself up for disaster or for failure here? And a lot of times it's just figuring things out as you go along. And so I think it's absolutely critical what you're doing to be able to help people get connected with other entrepreneurs and just to meet people where they are in those phases of growth so that they can, whether they're just getting started and they're trying to go from, they're basically making the side hustle switch, going from their career to, whatever the business ideas are, or they're in, they're trying to expand the business because they've had success. Not having that, other than podcasts and books and things of that nature, mentors really is what a lot of entrepreneurs need, and it's something that's definitely lacking.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in just having people that you can ask the questions to and give you the context around the answer. There's only so much that business books, podcasts, and sort of online groups can give you. And it's great to see, not just in Charlotte, but around the country, a lot of these sort of entrepreneurial ecosystems growing, and they have mentorship programs and accelerator programs, co-working spaces where you can just meet other like-minded people. It's really, it's a good time to be an entrepreneur, at least compared to what it was, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And one of the challenges, I think one of the things that people run into is that it is a good time to be an entrepreneur if you're really serious about it. It's also a very easy time to get started as, to be an entrepreneur and not know what you're doing. And, because the entry level, the upfront, cost of, starting a website and all that kind of stuff, everything is so low that people can really kind of jump in with both feet and then find very quickly that they don't know how to swim. they may understand their services, they may understand a product, but they don't necessarily understand how to build a business. And that's really where they need to get their mind wrapped around that. So I think, yeah, absolutely. I think what you're doing is critical. So one of the things that I heard you say was that you went into the mortgage industry, you saw that there was this niche that wasn't really being taken care of, and you're like, hey, I'll go do that on my own. And I think a lot of guys don't necessarily have that initial kind of the gumption to do it, or they don't really know what the next steps are. And like you said, you just kind of did it and had to kind of figure things out. Was there anything in your past or anything in your background, family-wise or anything like that you could say, I had some confidence about going out on my own because of, I saw it done, or anything like that?
Yeah, it's funny. I have people in my family will say that I've always had the entrepreneurial bug, and that when I was a kid, I was always finding something to make and sell to my classmates. So I was, it was like in elementary school, and like the little paper Chinese stars were just really cool. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I started like making a bunch of those and selling them to my friends. And it's just something that I've always continued, either selling like candy bars or yo-yos, or just doing things like that, all the way up through high school, where I needed a laptop. So I bought 6 laptops with low memory, upgraded the memory, and sold them all enough so that the 6th laptop I was able to keep for free. So there's always these like little things like that I've always had. I guess that it probably comes from my grandfather, who was a typewriter repair guy, but always had real estate and kind of little side hustles here and there. The idea, though, of independence, that idea of sort of working for yourself, a lot of that comes from my dad. He wasn't an entrepreneur in the traditional sense. He was a comic book artist. Wow. Which is also where a lot of my storytelling stuff comes from. But as a comic book artist, he worked for himself, and he would sell, his work to different comic book companies. But he always had that independence of working from home, deciding his own hours. So that was something that I definitely grew up around and always aspired to, right? Not going in 9 to 5 into a kind of a corporate setting. And I've always gone back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great story too. And I love that about the comic books and how that ties into story is very cool. As I'm just trying to think through this, my childhood, I was trying to think about how I kind of got into it. And if I had the entrepreneurial bug, some of the earliest memories I can have about selling things, and this got shut down fairly quickly. I was a kid, I was in school, and those little Matchbox cars or Hot Wheel cars, I used to take those into school. And for me, they were basically free, right? Because they either came from my, some old Christmas gift, or they were from a yard sale or something like that. And I'd take a couple of them to school, and the next thing I know, people are asking, hey, I'll give you a quarter for that. Okay, So I'm basically hawking these things for a quarter or 50 cents, and I'm starting to make some money. Well, of course, some parent calls the school and says, my kid didn't have enough money to buy a toy and felt left out and whatever. So it got shut down. Apparently, you're not supposed to sell things on school property. But those are some of the earliest memories I can have about entrepreneurship. And both of my grandparents, my granddads actually, were either construction workers or in the painting industry, and so they both had their own businesses and stuff like that. So there's things I could point to and say, yeah, I could see that being an influence. But I do think that there is just something, it's personality type most likely, where a lot of people just say, I don't want to work for somebody else, and I'm willing to take the risk to do it myself. So
yeah, and I think it comes to two things that I see a lot with entrepreneurs, and certainly have to do with my story. One is you're a natural problem solver. Yep. And sometimes, taking a more traditional job allows you to do that, and sometimes it doesn't. When you're an entrepreneur, you're always solving problems. And if that's the environment that you like, then entrepreneurship is certainly something that you should consider. And the other is necessity. My dad, like I said, was an artist, which means like any artist, is they're fantastic at their art, maybe not so much with money. Yeah. So there were lean times and not so and better times. And then actually my parents had gotten divorced when I was fairly young, and then it was my mom on her own with 4 of us. And so a lot of times it was just necessity. Like, we didn't have the money to buy a laptop, so I had to get creative on how to do that. And that drives a lot for a lot of entrepreneurs that I know as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I can say the same thing about myself. And one of the things that I worry about now that we're experiencing some success in our life is that, not so much for my kids, I don't worry about them so much, but I do worry about the next generation. Assuming that the things that I'm involved in continue to be successful, there's going to be a chance for those next generations, you know, my grandkids and so on, to experience a different kind of lifestyle than I had growing up. And at the same time, there's a desire, a really strong desire for them to experience a little bit of the school of hard knocks and want. And so that they do develop that creativity, right? You can't really force that stuff, but there is something about the third generation, you know, sometimes are the, you know, the spoiled ones that don't really remember how it all got started and whatnot. So,
yeah, and that's probably true for every parent. I mean, even with the next generation, there are, I'm sure there are already things different, you know, things in your kids' lives that are different than the way you grew up. And certainly with our kids, it's very different from the way I grew up. And so there is always a little bit of that, of how much of that are they going to be able to take? And I guess it's something that all parents deal with.
Yep, I think so. All right, so I want to jump back into this pitch breakfast thing because I'm excited to hear about how this works. So somebody shows up, they've got an idea. What's the atmosphere like there? Who are they speaking to? You know, how do they get involved in this? Give us an idea of how this comes about.
Sure. So companies apply on our website. They go to pitchbreakfast.com, they click apply, and we will actually schedule them out, usually about 2-3 months in advance. We will feature between 3 and 4 companies, and they each have the opportunity to give a 5-minute pitch, 5-minute presentation on their business, you know, what their product is, what their revenue model is, all of that, with slides. And they do this in front of a live audience, but also a panel of experts that we've put together. The panel consists of people who have both investment experience, they've been investors, as well as entrepreneurial experience. So they've sat on both sides of the table, so to speak. Yeah. And they complete their pitch, and then there's 10 minutes of Q&A and feedback from the panel, where they will say, hey, I didn't understand this part. You need to refine this part. Here's what you did well. Here's what you could do better. It's a safe practice environment. There's no real money on the line. Yeah. And we've had companies who come to us and will pitch at Pitch Breakfast before they go pitch at an angel group or to a VC fund. So it's just that opportunity to practice. And then it's a huge learning opportunity for our audience, right? Because you get to listen to 3-4 very diverse companies and all of the feedback that the panel gives them. And it's always spawns off ideas of, oh, wow, that could apply to me. Yeah. You know, I should think of the same thing.
So are the guys that are giving the feedback, are they giving feedback into the business idea itself or just the pitch, or both?
They give primarily idea into the pitch, which includes all of the elements of your business model. The companies that we get to pitch at Pitch Breakfast are pitching something that has some traction. They have beta users. Maybe they've got paying customers. Mm-hmm. It's not necessary, but they have to have some traction. Okay. We try to avoid people who just have an idea, because there's no real good way of giving feedback on an idea. Just go out there and prove it. And if people are willing to give you money for it, maybe something that I think is a bad idea is actually a great moneymaker. So just go out and do something about it.
So as these guys are coming into to give the pitch, is there any kind of are there any kind of supporting materials or things that you give them beforehand so they kind of know? So they're not coming in completely fresh. I mean, obviously they've got some customers maybe, or they've got a product, and so it's beyond the idea stage. But are there steps to basically crafting the pitch, and then you guys are basically just tweaking it after that point, or do they just come in just fresh and just like, let's see what you got?
So we do give them some guidelines on how to structure a good pitch. In fact, there's a video that I'm actually speaker in that we send out to all companies before they pitch that said an effective pitch includes these 10 elements, right? And if you structure it in this way, this will work out. Some do it, some don't. Some companies have already been pitching for a while, and so they're just coming in to kind of fine tune, and they've found an approach that works for them. We do generally advise, though, everybody that comes in to at least make sure that they present the opportunity. What's the opportunity that's out there in the market that they're going after? Yeah. The vehicle, what's their business, their company, their team, their technology, whatever that's going to take advantage of that, and an ask. Even if you're not raising money, you have an ask for introductions or access to a network or some sort of a resource. There has to be some ask for it to really be a pitch. That's the bare bones right there. Is you have to have those 3 pieces. And if you need extra help, we're willing to give it to it, but not everybody does.
So give us an idea, if you can, off the top of your head, a couple of the different elements. I know you said there's about 10 different things, but are there a few off the top of your head that you could think, hey, a good pitch has got to have these things? I know you mentioned the ask and a couple of other things. Is there anything else that we've got to have?
Yeah. So, an effective pitch, if you're pitching a company, you're pitching any kind of a business, it has to solve a problem, because that's where the value comes in. You're creating value, which creates money, which creates a return for the investors. You have to be able to very clearly state what that problem is and how big that problem is in terms of a market opportunity. So you have to start off with that. I mean, that has to be one of the strongest pieces. Then you really need to get into here's my product, here's my approach, here's what I'm doing, and here's why it's better than all of the other solutions out there, than all of your competitors. So there's some basic business model elements, like how you make money, how you find customers, and your team. Like, why is your team the one that's going to pull it off?
Okay, good.
And with the ask, you want to know where you've been, what you've done up to this point, where you think this could go, and what you need to make it happen, and tie that into an amount of money or whatever your ask is.
So is there one of these that almost every time somebody gets hung up on, they just intuitively they don't nail the whatever? Maybe it's the ask, or maybe it's the the solution. Is there some element that you would say, look, this is number 9 on the list is what you've got to focus on, because 90% of the people bomb on this, or is it just all over the place?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, the problem is the number one thing that people mess up on. And the reason for that is because they think they have it nailed, and they don't. The product is not addressing the problem that they state, or they don't clarify what the problem is that they're solving. There's an expression out there in the startup pitch world that is focus 80% on the problem and 20% on the solution. It doesn't mean you're going to spend 80% of your pitch or 80% of your time explaining the problem. What it does mean is that if you, Mike, if you are listening to somebody pitch you, right? Yeah. And they are convince you that they have this amazing solution, but you're not really clear on what problem they're solving, you're just going to say, hey, that sounds great, I'm just not interested. But if they've convinced you that there's this massive need, that there's a massive problem out there in the market, right, and that they have a potential solution, and then they run out of time, you may ask them questions about their solution, right? You may want to dig a little bit more into this, because they've convinced you of this opportunity. So a lot of times startups get so, especially when they're tech oriented, they get so caught up on their design or on their technology that they don't really focus on the basic problem that they're solving. And it's just not clear. They overcomplicate it, or they don't address the right problem. That's what I see more than anything else.
And, if I'm thinking about this as a venture capitalist, someone's trying to tell me what the problem is. The person giving the pitch, the company that's trying to maybe get some money, they understand the problem because they've experienced it firsthand, or they know customers who have this problem. But for me, I may have no understanding of this problem may be solved for people that aren't like me at all, right? I mean, it may be an issue that I have no experience with, and so you've got to convince me that this problem is real, and that it that exists on that it's worth solving is the other thing too. That it's actually damaging people's lives, or it's something that people need for whatever reason. And I think that you give me your idea on this, because I know problems can have multiple facets. You can have the external problem. This is the so for example, Wolf and Iron would say men have the external problem of not being able to thrive in their marriage, as an example. That's just one area. But they would also have an internal problem of dealing with a lack of confidence, and also sort of an isolationism, sometimes an apathy, right? So there's external problems and there's internal problems. Do you advise the people giving the pitch to kind of identify both of those, or do you really just say, give us the main problem, convince us of that, give us the data, or how do you guys go about that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different when you're dealing with, venture capital, and you're pitching a business that's going to go out there and get money. For the most part, the companies that, especially, and this is just across the board, that are raising money right now are B2B companies. And the reason why is because the problems are much easier to clarify. Companies will spend money to either make more money, save money, or save time. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And as long as you're saying, look, companies are these potential clients are wasting time on this, and our solution solves for this, it's pretty clear. And you really want to be kind of upfront with what people are willing to pay for. When you're dealing with community building, which is maybe a little bit more of what Wolf and Iron is doing, community building, art, and some B2C brands, it's a lot more nuanced. And it goes into what you described, which is the internal problem and external problem, which is a big part of storytelling, believe it or not. Yeah. That's different. And it's trickier to get that across to investors. And it's something that is the reason why a lot of times you're not brands like yours. I'm not saying yours specifically, but brands like yours generally don't go out and raise venture capital. And that's why. It's because you're touching on a very internal, complex human problem.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong, there's a huge market for that. And people make a lot of money in that space, but it's not something that the traditional sort of high growth venture capitalist is investing in.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say that for every man who has a resolution to the wounds that were left by his father, that man makes an extra, $20,000 a year, or, I mean, there's no way to, and that comes back to us in sales. I mean, there's not really a way to put, a price tag easily on that, but it is still a big part of the story. So, and I do want to get into the story because I think that what we're kind of doing, guys, as you're listening to this, you may be thinking, I don't have an idea. I'm not trying to pitch anything. We're going to be actually breaking this down into from the pitch and into the story, and that's going to really relate to how you sell anything, really yourself. It could be as a just a person who's going to go for a job, but also as definitely as an entrepreneur. Before I do that, though, before we jump into the story piece, I wanted to ask about body language and giving feedback on that, because I'm imagining these people are up here, they're giving the pitch. Do you guys give feedback on, like, hey, look, the presentation was great, you nailed all these different points, but I just didn't believe you because you didn't make eye contact, or your hands didn't move the whole time, or your hands moved too much, or whatever the case is?
So we don't sometimes, especially if it's evident enough, depending on who the panelist is, the panel will. We've had the panel call someone out and say, look, when you keep your arms crossed like that, I'm not inclined to believe what you're saying, and they will give feedback on that. Pitch breakfast, we generally give them some guidance on the content and on what investors want to hear, and then kind of let them go from there. I also personally, through my consulting company, do advise companies on pitching investors. And in fact, I do a workshop for an accelerator program here in town where we get into a lot of the pitch, and we partner with another specialist, and her focus is all the style of the pitch. And she gets a lot into the body language and presenting yourself and, being authentic and connecting to your own personal story and all of that. That is a huge part of it. For those purposes, I tend to focus more on the content, on the message itself.
Yeah. So this is a great transition point then, because we're going to be talking next about the consulting side of things that you do, and really crafting the story. Now, for somebody who's doing a B2B service or something like that, how important is story? Or is that more something that you guys focus on with the brands that would be more like Wolf and Iron, where they're trying to make that personal connection? Am I misunderstanding that, or is story is just really, really important no matter what?
Yeah, so story is important no matter what, and this is not just for brands, startups, or anything like that. Okay. Story is how humans connect to each other. It's a sense-making mechanism that we use to understand the world around us. Everything we know of, everything that we see is framed in story in our minds. Mm-hmm. What I do is I just teach people how to use that. Whether they're a startup and they're raising money, I use sort of storytelling techniques throughout that structure. Or if it's a personal brand, working with solopreneurs, with a consultant, a coach, a creative professional, then it's about their own personal brand story. Or if you're creating a brand like Wolf and Iron, then story is an extremely important part of that. But there are certain elements of story that are universal, have been universal since the beginning of time, and that the more you as a marketer or a job seeker or a personality, whatever, the more you understand, the more effective you'll be in communicating your own brand.
So give us an idea of what some of these universal elements are then, because I think I know where you're going with this, but I don't want to make too much of a presumption. Give us an idea of what we're talking about there.
Sure. So this isn't something that I've created, and it's been around for a while. It started with this guy, Joseph Campbell, who wrote a book called The Hero of a Thousand Faces. What he did was he found out that by going through ancient texts, mythologies, religious stories, there's this framework that keeps coming back over and over again, and he calls it the hero's journey. And if any of your listeners have had English lit class in college or maybe in high school, they might have heard this idea of the hero's journey. And it's this story that there's going to be some main character, there's going to be the hero of the story who desires something. They want to, achieve something, become someone, get the girl, defuse the bomb, whatever their goals are in life or in that particular story, that they cannot achieve because there's some sort of blockage. There's some sort of antagonist, a villain. There's something that keeps them from being able to achieve that.
Yeah.
And they're unable to do anything about it until they meet someone else, the mentor, the guide.
Yeah.
They meet somebody who's able to help them on their journey by explaining to them that they've been there before and that they know of a better way. They know of a different path. And they lead them on that path to accomplishing this goal. But in accomplishing this goal, that person becomes transformed. They become a different person than they were when that journey started. And this is something that I grew up with because my dad, like I said, was a comic book artist.
Yeah.
He actually drew the original Star Wars comic books.
Wow.
When the movies first came out. So Star Wars are a really big deal at my house. And Star Wars is a great example of the hero's journey. In fact, George Lucas had written a very raw script. And once he discovered the hero's journey, he scrapped it completely and essentially focused it entirely on the hero's journey, right? Luke Skywalker is the hero, and he wants to, seek adventure. He wants to defeat the Empire, but he can't because he feels powerless. But through Obi-Wan and then later on Yoda, he finds another way, which is to become a Jedi. And in doing so, goes through, the whole arc of the first three movies, and he achieves success, but he becomes a very different person. He becomes transformed in that journey. That's the hero's journey in a nutshell.
So I think a lot of guys are listening to this and they're going, yes, I recognize that. That's totally the story that we all love, and it just gets rebranded and redone, over and over again. It's sold to us all throughout the year through movies and things like that. And but it just doesn't get old. We love the story, and especially when somebody can take those elements of the hero's journey and kind of give it a little twist or something different there, right?
I certainly.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I love it. I've got 4 kids, small kids, so we watch a lot of Disney movies and Pixar movies, which are incredible at storytelling.
Uh-huh.
I did a workshop once where we focused on Finding Nemo and how Marlin, Nemo's dad, he's the hero, and who is the wise mentor? It's Dory. It's the fish that forgets everything.
Yeah.
She that's the twist, right? Is that she's the wise mentor, and she's the one who actually ends up teaching him, even though Marlin resisted. She's the one who teaches him to become that different person that he needs to be at the end.
Yeah, that's great. That's an excellent twist, and in some ways, that's sort of been done. But like if you think about some of the old the Chinese movies where you've got the hero that's going on the journey, and his mentor is an alcoholic, he's a drunk, right? He's a drunken
right.
monk, but he fights like crazy, or even like Haymitch from Hunger Games. So that's just it's instead of saying the mentor is going to be all knowing and all wise. Well, you introduce the mentor that still knows more than the hero does, but has all these other issues, and there's a depth there as well. So I love it. And when someone comes up with a unique twist on story as we know it, it's just fantastic. Just as an aside, have you ever heard of the book The Story Grid?
Story Grid, I have not. No.
So there's and this will be good for any guys who are interested in this kind of stuff. It'll run every movie for you and every TV show that you watch. But essentially, Story Grid is a book that was written by an editor. He's been in the business for over 20 years, and people would write a story, got the right characters, good scene, good settings, and all this other kind of stuff. Seems like, it from the kind of the pitch or whatever, it should work, but the story just doesn't work. And he would have to kind of figure out, why does this story not work? Well, they're missing some scenes, like, even in the hero's journey, they're missing some of these elements. And he would call them obligatory scenes. Anyhow, so he puts this book together that basically outlines for every genre that you could think of, what the obligatory scenes that you've got to have in that genre, so in that story, in order to make it work. If you're watching a movie and it's got the hero's journey in it, but you leave out one of those key elements, let's say there's no mentor, something feels missing. And you may not be able to describe what it is, but somebody who knows how story works would catch that. So anyhow, it's a great book. And he actually does a podcast as well where he's trying to help a guy that doesn't know how to write a story. So it's really interesting just hearing them kind of go through that. But you'd probably appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks.
So as we're kind of thinking about this, creating a story for your own brand, I'm thinking that guys are listening to this and they're going, I understand the story, the hero's journey, but I'm having a hard time understanding how that relates to my life and into the product or the service that I'm offering. And I think that's really,
So here's
go ahead.
Here's kind of the interesting part about that, right? So because a lot of people will see that and say, all right, yeah, I get it. I've watched Star Wars. I can see where that makes sense.
Yeah.
But when they go out and they start, first, the reason this is so compelling, the reason why Joseph Campbell found that this just kept coming up over and over again is because it's the story of our lives. We can all relate to that.
Yeah.
All humans have goals, things that we aspire to, things that we want to achieve, and we have things that block, right? We have self-doubts, we have, external and internal factors that prevent us from getting there. And usually it stays that way until some external force, usually a person, a mentor, a guide, and it could be through a book, it could be through, a group, it could be a collection of mentors, but some external people show us a different way, and then we can go achieve this, and then we set new goals, and the cycle repeats itself. So the reason the hero's journey resonates with us, with all humans, is because it's the story of our lives. We all wake up as the heroes of our own story. We're the main character of our story. And we set goals, we have dreams, and we have challenges, and we have to overcome them. That's why it works. So here's where the twist comes in.
Yeah.
Most businesses, most individuals, people building brands, solopreneurs, they see the world through the lens of the hero. They are the hero, and they see everything else as either the antagonist or the guide. So if you're a business owner, let me ask you this. If you're a business owner and you are the hero of your journey and you have a goal to, grow your business and you're having an issue with a customer, right, or with a client, then are they the guide or are they the obstacle?
Yeah, that's a great question because it could be one or the other based on your perspective.
Well, but generally they become the obstacle. If you see yourself as the hero and your goals for your business as, the end goal, then your customers become the obstacle. Sure. And that's not a way that you want to approach a business. Yep. So here's where the flipping, here's where the flip really comes. If you learn to position your brand not as the hero, but as the guide, and understand that it's your customer that's the hero, that your customer wakes up every day with their own goals, with their own objectives, and they have challenges and things that they have to overcome, and you are the guide. You're the mentor. You're the one who comes and helps them overcome that. If you can position your brand in that way, then it makes all of your messaging a lot more clear.
I think it's absolutely key. And instead of, as you kind of think about this, and I know we've got a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening to this, business owners, and, as you guys are thinking about this, instead of saying, look at the cool new website we've got, or look at look at all the things that we're doing, how neat is this? Look at us. Wow, we're cool. Say, how does what we're doing, basically offer it as what we're doing is really going to help you. We're going to help you, right. We're going to help guide you to whatever your goals are. And I think that's absolutely key. We do see a lot of companies that talk about, they'll send out 3 emails talking about their new website and how they revamped it, and they're kind of patting themselves on the back, and that's good for them, but it's, doesn't do anything for the customer unless you've helped to kind of shift that mindset of what we're doing is really for the customer. So, like for example, for us with Rustic in Maine, if a customer comes to us and says, "Hey, I'm having an issue figuring out my ring size," I don't see that as an obstacle. I see that as the customer basically saying, in one sense, we're not doing a good job helping them figure out what their ring size is before they order a ring from us. And so we need to position it as, we're going to help you figure out your ring size. So instead of saying, we found a better way to help you, instead of basically framing it as what we've done, simply position it as, we're helping you determine, the best ring size. And that every obstacle that a customer presents, it really is an opportunity to just go above and beyond and blow them out of the water. Because you do. Yeah, go ahead.
And it doesn't just apply to small businesses. I did a workshop once for college students, and the question came up about, that they're all trying to find jobs. And, you can go into a job interview, you can go into a job search with the mentality of it's all about you, right? Yeah. Well, what do I want? What's this going to mean for me? Oh my gosh, I'm so self-conscious, right? I'm here in front of this person. I want to work for this company, and it's all about you. Or you can shift that mindset and say it's all about the company. It's all about the person across the desk. What are their goals? What are they trying to achieve, right? What are the obstacles? What's keeping them from achieving those goals? And how can I help? How can my experience, my expertise, my background be used to help the company, my manager, with their own goals? If you have that mindset of focusing it on them, it helps you position your own experience and your own story the way I explained positioning the mentors in the guide, right? Yeah. I can help you with that because I have this unique experience or this unique ability or background or whatever it is. They are much likelier, they're much more likely to listen to you. And that's whether you're a job search or even raising money. I mentioned Pitch Breakfast. It's the same thing. If I'm focusing too much on here's who I am and here's my technology, the investor's not interested. But if I say, hey, investor, here's an opportunity, and I know what you're looking for, and we have a solution that's going to solve this opportunity and give you a good return, now they're listening with the right mindset.
And so as people are crafting the story, then there's a sense that they're telling the story for the benefit of the hearer, of the customer. And right. as if I think about this from like a movie standpoint, a mentor comes along and the hero's, struggling like crazy. He's been defeated. He's been beat down by the villain. He obviously doesn't have what it takes on his own to kind of get to where he wants to be. And the mentor comes out of the shadows and he says, hey, it takes him home, cleans him up, and basically begins to tell his story. Hey, I was where you were at one point, and I've been through some of the things that you're going through, and I know that the challenges that you're going to have to face in order to get to where you want to be. But at the end of it, the mentor is essentially going to say, and that's why I'm the guy to help you with this, because I've been where you are. I know how to get through right. the things that you've been through. And so it is some of that. There is a shift there, because some of it is telling your personal story, but then changing it to really relate to that mentoring model, so that your business is really postured to be helpful to the hero, which is your customer.
Yeah, and that's really the key, right? So I'm not saying don't talk about yourself, only ask your customer questions. It's really about understanding your customer's story first, and then telling your story such that it relates to theirs, so that I can see here's the value, here's what about my story, my background, my experience that you can learn from. Here's why it's going to be helpful to you. Yeah. That's really the key.
So what about for the guys that, and I'm from the South, and so I don't know if this is totally a Southern thing or not, but there's something about not wanting to have the kind of lights and the attention on you, right? And I right. That's even a challenge for me to kind of overcome, because I do so much want it to be about what other people are doing that I sometimes leave myself out of that. And what about, do you have any advice for the guys that are worried about coming across as arrogant or prideful or self-absorbed, but yet they absolutely have to get their story out there, and they have to become comfortable speaking about their perspective and how it relates to other people's challenges?
Yeah, no, there's probably two sides to that. And I'll preface this by saying that I've been here in Charlotte, right, in the South, for a little over 20 years now. So I've acclimated a lot more than maybe when I'm originally from upstate New York, so okay. It's kind of a different mindset up there. Yeah. So depending on the situation, right? But if you're a coach, creative advisor, mentor, consultant, something, or you have a business and this plays a role in it, one is to tell the story of other people that you've helped, right? So if I'm a consultant, let's say I'm a financial consultant, and we're talking about your financial issues and retirement and all of that. It's to take the attention away from me, but to highlight what I'm able to do, is to say, well, you know what? I talked to another guy just like you, right? His name was Steve, and he had this situation and this challenge. And let you, the person that I'm talking to, yeah. really see themselves reflected in this other person. And you can walk them through the story. Look, Steve came with this. He had these issues. He had these goals. And together we were able to put a plan in place that was able for him, allowed him to achieve, these results. And, 10 years later, he was able to watch his, daughter go to Yale or whatever the goals might be.
Sure.
But the point is, I didn't make it about me. I made it about Steve.
Yep.
And Steve is following a trajectory very similar to yours. So essentially what I'm saying is, hey, do you want to be like Steve? Well, we can together formulate a plan that will do the same for you. So I didn't talk about myself, but I still spoke to my ability.
And even there, I mean, you're using a story because you're telling Steve's story, right? And
it's all stories.
Yeah,
it's all stories, Mike.
And the guy who's listening to this story, and this is advice I've had for other guys too, instead of directly telling somebody what to do or what you're going to do for them, use that sort of abstracted story to kind of help them see someone else's, help them kind of see someone else's story, and they can relate to that, and then bring it back to them and say, you're Steve, basically, and I can help you be another Steve if you'll let me.
So that's one part of it. And just if I could add kind of that second piece of it is, to a certain extent, you do kind of have to get over that. And so there's the maybe bitter pill, but if you really want to build a personal brand, the only way you're going to do that with authenticity is to allow people to engage with your most authentic story. And sometimes that means telling parts of your background, your own story that are harder to talk about. But when you do that, you invite people to engage with you on a deeper level and understand that, hey, I have some issues in my background, or I have some issues that I'm dealing with, and here's someone else who's dealing with the same, and you create trust right away. If you listen to any of the big sort of solo speakers and brand speakers and all of that, or just listen to any of the whoever your hero or guru is, books you like to read, you'll listen that a lot of them will tell their very sincere background stories, right? They grew up in poverty or abuse, or they went to a new town and didn't speak the language, or whatever that background story is. The more they tell that, the more we engage with them, because we're all human and we all have our own insecurities and our own background issues that we relate to. If I come to you and I just say, look, I'm just this perfect person who's had this perfect background and everything is just kind of worked out for me and I've built this great business, you can't relate.
Yep.
You just can't. Like, that's just not reality. So if you want to really build a brand, especially a personal brand, you're going to have to let people in, and that might take a little getting used to.
It absolutely does, I think, for some people. And if you're one of the guys that's listening to this and going, man, I struggle with that part, think about it like this. How many times have you seen a politician come on the scene or somebody coming in to sell something, and you just wanted them to cut through all the crap and just be real? The thing is, people want the exact same thing from you. They want that authenticity. They want to know who you are for real, and they want to be trusted to know that you believe they can handle your life story, and not go away screaming and crying and freaking out, or whatever your deepest fears are, right? A fear of man in that sense. People want you to be authentic, and even if they don't agree with everything that you say, it doesn't really matter. They still want to know the real you. And at some point, like you said, you just got to get over that, and you've got to believe in that and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're wrapping up here, and I got one last question for you, and this is a question that I ask to most of my guests. You do some really cool stuff. You're helping other people achieve their dreams and their aspirations, and to pursue freedom and whatnot. What does that mean to you as a man? Like, at the end of the day, when you know that you're helping people to break out of the kind of the cycle maybe they've been in, and to achieve those dreams. How does that resonate with you? How does it sit with you?
Yeah. No, I see that as a big part of being a man. So much of the whole story process that I walk through is about understanding that everybody needs help. Everybody needs guidance. Everybody needs connection. Everybody is searching for that, right? They're searching for the mentors and the guides, because nobody's perfect. And that's always the funny thing about whenever you talk about movies and stories, is we always think, the hero, right? The perfect hero. Well, no, think of any movie, any story that you like. The hero is not perfect. They're full of flaws, and it's why they need help from the mentor, from the guide, in order to get closer to those goals. And I think that as a man, a big part of that is understanding that, hey, everybody's not perfect. And that means you. Yep. We all have flaws, and that means you. But guess what? Get over yourself, understand that everybody around you feels the same way, and do what you can to help them, right? Whether that means helping others as a consultant, right? Helping other businesses, other people, or whether that means helping in your own civic organization, your own church, but helping other people achieve their dreams, helping other people reach their goals, helping other people on their own hero's journey, to me, is what being a man is all about.
Yeah.
And so that's I guess how I frame what I do with being a man.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great answer, and I absolutely think that's right. I mean, I think that we're all called to help each other out and to we don't have all the answers, but we may have some answers because we've been at some place.
Right.
We may be just a little bit ahead of somebody else in some area in life, and it's definitely our calling to share that with other people and help them out. So, Juan, I really
go
ahead.
I was just saying that's something, and you just hit on something that I think is important to really say. There's a lot of, especially if you want to be a consultant, there's a lot of this fear of, well, I'm not an expert. You don't have to be an expert. You just need to know a little bit more than the people that you're helping. And that's it, right? You are a mentor or a guide. You're a guru compared to someone who's just getting started at whatever. So just help them. And as long as you do that, you can build a business, you can build a brand around it, you can be a success in that way. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, excellent closing point there. I appreciate that. Well, my friend, it's been great having you on here. It's been a great conversation. I'm glad that you're local, so that way I'll be able to connect with you and come check out what you've got going on. For the guys who want to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
So the best way to do that is just go to my website, which is my name, JuanGarzon.com. So JuanGarzon.com. The other brands, StartCharlotte, Pitch Breakfast, those are also .com. So pitchbreakfast.com, StartCharlotte.com, or just shoot me an email on my website at JuanGarzon.com, and I can certainly point you in the direction of anything, especially in the Charlotte area, that you might be interested in.
Great. And we'll also have a link out to everything that you've got going on there. If you guys head over to wolfandiron.com/Garzon, Garzon. Once again, that's /Garzon, and we'll make sure we got links out there to all the stuff, and the show notes and everything like that as well. So, all right, sir, thank you very much. This has been a pleasure.
Yep, thanks, Mike.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.